This is Denise Mathew, and today I'm going to make a hammered rectangular pendant, and I have some gemstones in the center of them, and you could use this as a birthstone type of thing. Basically, it's just a frame, and then you have some gemstones or crystals or beads or whatever you want in the center. This one is an earring that I've made. I've added an ear wire to it. So if you had two of these, you could have pretty earrings. And if you notice, I didn't have to add a jump ring to it because it's going to hang straight the way it is already. The other one I have here is just a pendant. And again, I've just used some little gemstone rondelles. These are about 5 millimeters. After I made the necklace, I put a jump ring on it so that the pendant would hang properly. So let's get started. So I'm just going to work off the spool. I'm working with a 16 gauge. You could go up to an 18 gauge as well. So I have these multi-size looping pliers, and I'm just going to wrap right around one of the barrels. It just makes it more consistent, but you can use any round nose pliers, they'll all work. You're basically just making a loop so you can attach a jump ring later on. And of course you're going to reshape this. This is just sort of a rough kind of thing that we're starting out with. And then after that, I have a drawing here. This is 1 inch by 1 inch by 1/4 of an inch. So you don't have to do that, but it will keep your pattern a little bit more consistent, especially if you're going to do something like earrings. And you can just adjust it accordingly. So now, after I've made this loop, I'm just going to hold on to this loop, and I'm just going to do a 90-degree angle. Lay it down. Center that loop. So something like this. And then start to guide it through. Once you get down to the end, you're just going to take your chain nose pliers and then just do a little bit of a 90-degree angle. And then another 90-degree angle. And we're going to hammer this out, so again, it's just really a rough pop. You don't have to actually do this. If you want to just eyeball it, that's absolutely fine too. And then once we have something that's sort of similar to what we have, we can actually trim back that wire. And I would leave about a 1/2 inch at least, maybe 3/4. And then, because we're going to make another loop with it, so you're just going to do another 90-degree angle like that. And again, it's very messy looking, but we will be hammering it and fixing it up. Now I'm going to take my pliers again, and I'm just going to make another loop with the tail of the wire. And it's going to be the same size as the one I already have, because they're actually going to line up together. So something like this is what you would have. Okay, and again, we're going to push them together a little bit more so that they're, in order to usually push things together like that, you just overcorrect, and then usually it will just slip into place. Now I'm just going to start to try and make those corners a little bit more pointed, a little more crisp. So I'm just taking my pliers and I'm just squeezing with my pliers. Now if you don't want any marks on your wire, you might want to wrap your pliers with some tape. I'm going to be hammering it anyway, so it doesn't really matter if there's any marks. There will be some more marks when I'm hammering it anyways, and I'm going to texturize it to give it sort of a hammered look. So now I'm just moving the wire, making it a little bit crisper. So at this point, I have something a little bit more uniform. Something that looks like that. We're going to hammer it anyways, and we can always go back afterwards and reshape it again. That's no problem at all. So now I'm just going to hammer it. I'm going to use the flat side of my hammer to just flatten it, and then I'm going to use the ball peen part of my hammer to texturize it. And I'm going to turn down the volume so you won't hear it. Notice that after you've hammered it, the loops have sort of not come out of alignment, so just push them back in. It's no problem, you can do that. And it'll be much harder now and much firmer, so it's going to stay in place better. Okay? And also, sometimes what will happen is the loop will come undone a little bit. So if that happens, just go in and you could either use your round nose pliers or you could use your chain nose pliers and just bring it back into shape a little bit. Alright, and then again you can go back in. If the sides don't seem to be aligned properly, you can just start to just work it. I mean, this is where you're just going to make it your own. Just make it exactly the way you like it. So you would have something that looks like that. I'm working with about a ½ foot of a 26 gauge wire. You're going to have to gauge how much wire you need according to the size of your pendant or ear charm, whatever you want to make it. So now I'm just going to take the wire. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to wire those two loops together. So if you see the side view, there's two distinct loops and I want to wire them together, but also that wire is going to be used to string my beads down the center as well, so it's got a double purpose. So just wrap it about 2 or 3 times around that loop. Just around the center. And again, it's just really stabilizing it, but it's also preparing your wire for putting your beads on it. So just keep it at the center of the loop. Okay. And I started with a bit of a tail, so I'm just going to wrap that tail in. People will actually just trim that off, but I'd like to use the wire if I can, just wrap it in. So just wrap that right into the loop with the other ones. Make sure your wires are nice and tight together and nothing sharp is. Okay, so this is what we would have so far. And make sure that the wire is centered. And then this is when you would just start to string your beads. And I have just some tourmalines in different colors here, so I'm just going to start to string on some beads. I'm not really being careful with the colors that I'm using, I'm just going to, but you might have a color theme that you want to use. You might want to use birthstone colors, you might want to use just all one color. I'm not exactly sure how many are actually going to fit in there, but I'm just going to start keep stringing them on until I have sort of what I think I need. And I'm using, these are a 5mm rondelle, faceted rondelle. This is what we have so far. So I'm just going to use a couple more. You just want to make sure that when you're finished, when you have your adding the beads, you have to have a little space to wrap your wire around the end. So I would say that's probably enough for me. So now that I have these on, I'm just going to take that same wire and just wrap it around a few times around the bottom, and I'm just going to stabilize it. Now you want to pull this fairly taut because this is going to be holding your beads on, and you want them to be straight. So, but if you notice there's a little bit of space on top, but that's okay because it's better to have space rather than having the bead hang off the side. So probably about 3 or 4 wraps again. And then trim back and tuck that wire in. Make sure there's no sharp bits. And then you can adjust it so that the wire is in the center. And at this point, if it doesn't line up, or you can still go back in with your pliers and start to adjust it accordingly, but I think it looks okay. So you couldn't hang this as a pendant. If you wanted to put it on an ear wire or something, that would actually hang perfectly. But if you want to hang it as a pendant, this is when you would add a jump ring. So I just have this jump ring here. It's about a 10 millimeter. I'm just going to put that on. And that would make your finished pendant. So this concludes the tutorial. I hope you liked it. If you did, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. We'll see you next time. Thanks for coming. Bye for now.